I come from a pretty messed up home. My dad left me and my mum when I was only 2, and she and I have been on our own ever since. It didn't matter. I never even knew him. But after about 10 years, my grandmother on my father's side wanted to reach out. She herself had only just found out about our existence, and after her husband had died, she was feeling the void of having no one. And I suppose that's what made her reach out to us. Not knowing your grandparents means that it can be quite hard connecting with them, which was certainly true in my case. However, after a long and boring evening at the mall, we came home and made s'mores and just had some friendly chit-chat. I was playing on an app on my phone, and she asked what I was. At the time, Five Nights at Freddy's was pretty big, and I tried explaining the concept of the game. She laughed for a little bit, and said that she had stories of real horrors that are far scarier than anything that can happen in a game. This piqued my interest, and I asked her about some of the things she had experienced in her lifetime. She told me many stories, and this really led to us growing a close connection, which I greatly valued, as she passed away quite recently. Point being, though, she never had any motive to lie. She loved telling me these stories, told me all the people in her family, and I really felt like I had a grasp of everything that was going on, as well as a far better understanding of what it must have been like growing up in her time. She told me one story, though, that will always stick with me. And it's only later that I found out about these black-eyed children did I piece all the puzzle pieces together. What I'm about to tell you is 100% true. I hope you enjoy. My grandmother came from a small town in Ireland. She had 3 sisters, and they lived together in a small house in a rural village. She told me that this village was the kind of place where you knew everybody, literally everyone, and that there wouldn't be a person that you would pass on the street who you didn't have some recollection of who they were and how they were related to someone else. It was quite different back in those days. Everything seemed to be centered in the town, and not many people came and went to other places. This detail is important, so hold on to it. Now, being that the village was quite small and that everyone knew everyone, it would be strange for someone unknown to pop into the village, right? Well, my grandma and her 2 sisters were just walking home from spending the evening with some other friends. It was quite dark out, and they were trying to rush home by the light of the moon, which was quite prevalent. It was a bitterly cold night, and they remember it quite well. As they made it home, all 3 of them started getting ready to go up to bed, as all 3 of them shared the same room. However, my grandmother thought she'd left something in her coat pocket, so downstairs she went in order to try and retrieve it. That's when she heard something. She was a bit confused, but nonetheless put her ear closer to the door to listen, bearing in mind it was quite dark. There she heard something, the scuffling of feet, and right before she went to open the door, did she hear, "Hello? Sarah? Sarah?" Now, of course, everyone in the town knew her name was Sarah, but this was a voice she was unfamiliar with. It was the voice of a young girl. There weren't many young girls in town, but perhaps it was someone who she'd overlooked. So she went to get the door and slowly creaked it open. "Hello?" she said. Down on the pavement did she see a young girl of about 8. The thing that was rather unsettling about this girl is that she was wearing a light summer top and a skirt. She looked like if she were out there any longer, she would freeze to death. My grandmother instantly became concerned and wanted to bring her in out of the cold. But something was wrong. She looked up and down at this girl, who didn't seem to be in a hurry, and just had this very odd presence. Something wasn't right. How did she know her name? She'd never met this girl before, and before she even opened the door, she somehow knew that she was behind it. "Is everything all right, dearie?" she said. She looked up at my grandmother with these big, black eyes. In the dim light of the moon, she could make nothing out but inky blackness. She looked up at my grandmother and with a wry little smile said, "Please, let me in. I'm cold." My grandma thought that of course she'd be cold. She picked the completely wrong outfit to wear today. But what is an 8-year-old girl doing out in the middle of the night? So she asked her, "Who are you? What's your name? Why are you here? Where are your parents?" She barraged the little girl with questions. She, however, ignored each and every one of them and just said, "Please let me in. It's cold. I need to find my mummy." Now, my grandma was getting freaked out. It was incredibly unlikely that a girl from origins unknown who refused to answer these questions would be there in the middle of the night. Part of her thought that she was going insane. And she said that the police station was only down the road and to try there, and that they would be much better help. She slowly went to close the door, and that's when the little girl started getting angry. "Let me in. You have to let me in." My grandmother started freaking out and slammed the door shut, loud enough that one of her sisters came downstairs to ask what was wrong. Just before she could make it to the bottom step, did the child on the other end cry out, "Edith, Edith, please let me in. I'm cold." She looked at my grandmother, and they stared at each other, and she asked who was on the other side. My grandma said she didn't know, that she'd never met that girl before in her life, and that she wanted to come in, and that she had told her where the police station was. Edith said to not let anybody in, and that this would be something that Papa should deal with. So they went upstairs and woke up their father, who groggily came downstairs to check out the wannabe intruder. He opened the front door, ready to take the little girl to the police station, but she was gone. They'd been gone no more than 15 to 20 seconds, then her father stepped out barefoot and looked around the streets, just up and down quickly. She explained that these streets were made in such a way that there could have been absolutely no way for that girl to hide so quickly. There's literally nowhere she could have gone. He stood there in awe, a bit dumbfounded, unsure if his girls were playing a practical joke on him. Then he went back inside, told them to forget about it, and go to sleep. The real kicker here is that my grandma had a nightmare that night about the girl with the jet black eyes. And that was something that she never forgot. Not only because of how creepy and out of place it was, but because of how she knew her name. Now, this only gets creepier still when I told her about the black-eyed kids phenomenon, and she quickly clocked that this was one of those. She never saw one since, and says that when someone knocks on the door, she has a look through the peephole, and if she didn't know them, she would never open it.